Welcome and thank you for joining BmoreArt at Baltimore Craft Week. This is part of the Connect and Collect event series produced by BmoreArt. My name is Raquel Castedo. I'm programming chair of AIGA Baltimore, and we are co-hosting this event. Our AIGA Baltimore community is glad to support BmoreArt and the American Craft Council to elevate crafts and craft artists and strengthen the connections we share through art, craft, and design. I want to share a little bit about AIGA with you in case you don't know about it. We are the largest professional association of designers in the world, and we are committed to advance the value and impact of design, both locally and globally, and work together to inspire, support, and learn from each other at every stage of our careers. Our 75 chapters are run 100% by volunteers, serving over 20,000 members across the nation. We're always looking for volunteers, speakers, and sponsors, so reach out if you want to get involved. A special shout out to all our AIGA leaders, chapters, and members, all representatives from national, and especially the members of our local board of directors. For more information about AIGA National, please visit aiga.org. I would like to welcome Sarah Schultz. She is the executive director of the American Craft Council, and she's going to be sharing a little bit about ACC with you. Hi, Sarah.
Hi, thank you. Thank you so much, and welcome to everybody for being here today. I am broadcasting to you live from the American Craft Council Library and Archives in our headquarters in Minneapolis. For those of you who may not know, the American Craft Council is an 80-year-old organization that champions the ever-changing work of contemporary craft and advocates for the vital roles that craft plays in our contemporary life. As a national nonprofit, we support makers in their practice and work and build a future where craft brings us together as people. Among the many things we do to support what we call the craft ecology is the publishing of American Craft Magazine, which you can feel free to subscribe to, and I hope you do, which tells the stories of and amplifies the incredible diversity of craft practice and makers in this country, and our national in-person craft shows. Our annual show in Baltimore at the Baltimore Convention Center, which we've been hosting for over 30 years, continues to be our flagship show and brings together more than 600 artists and 18,000 enthusiasts to celebrate and support the joy of the handmade. As COVID caused us to cancel our in-person shows this year, Baltimore Craft Week, our online event, is both a way to provide opportunities for artists to continue to produce and sell work, but also a celebration of the creative community of Baltimore, and is a way to stay deeply connected to a community that we love. We've all experienced a series of momentous events this pandemic year that have left us reeling and propelling us into new realities. And the traumas of institution and structural racism and violence have tragically escalated again this week in Minneapolis and continue to call us to hold ourselves accountable, to be clear and true about our own roles and responsibilities to building a more inclusive, just world. The importance of community to all of this is central, as is the importance of artists and making to nurturing this world, a joyful world, a world of intention, connection, beauty, truth, healing, imagination, and possibility. We are grateful to bring this community of artists together to talk about the value of the handmade in our lives and the exciting ways that artists are evolving and inventing at this moment. I really want to thank AIGA Baltimore for co-hosting this event, and I really, my deep heartfelt thanks to the artists for bringing their brilliance to the marketplace. And lastly, I want to thank and welcome Kara Ober and BmoreArt for helping to organize this event, and for all of their work with Baltimore Craft Week. You are also lucky to have BmoreArt as a convener, connector, catalyst, and true champion of artists in your community. And I am deeply grateful to Kara and for all the work that they're doing and for our continued partnership. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much. So good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Kara Ober. I'm the founding editor at BmoreArt, Baltimore's art and culture magazine. So for anyone who is new to our publication, BmoreArt publishes online every day, and then twice a year, we publish a beautiful print journal. We work with Baltimore-based writers, photographers, artists, and designers, so that our print journals are really a collaborative work of art in themselves. So we're set to release issue 11 in May, and we have launched a new subscription service during COVID-19. After all of the closures and cutbacks, this has really been keeping us afloat, and we're gratified by the support the community has showed us. We want our readers to be able to continue to feel connected to the creative culture of Baltimore, but from the safety of their own homes. So I'm going to share some images with you. So just give me a sec to pull this up. Hold on, share. And okay, so there's our print journals. So each of these print journals is designed around a specific theme. And we do this in part to force us to sort of reach beyond our comfort zone, but also to draw out relationships between seemingly disparate practices and projects. So our goal is always to build community and awareness around the arts in the region. So 2 issues back, so issue 9, we responded to the theme of craft. And I'm really excited to see many of the conversations resurface here today. And most importantly, the idea that craftspersons are artists in every sense of the word, and that the historic divide between art and craft is quite outdated and false. Although the market for art and craft is sometimes different, and we'll talk about this more today, a distinction between art and craft has been used in the past to divide, and in particular, divide those with a formal education from those without it, and also along lines of gender and race. So at BmoreArt, we focus on artists, not just their ideas and the things that they make, but also the way they creatively design their lives, their livelihood, their communities, and the world around them. We are always open to artists working in a variety of different directions and media, and whether they are traditional fine artists, craftspersons, or self-taught, we believe that artists from different backgrounds and practices who are finding success have much to teach one another. So Connect and Collect is a BmoreArt program designed by myself and Jeffrey Kent with support from the Robert W. Deutsch Foundation. We designed this program to empower, educate, and cultivate a new generation of collectors in Baltimore. We believe that artists, communities, and cities thrive when individuals, organizations, businesses, and institutions collect the art of their place and time. Before COVID-19, we hosted a speaker series, studio visits and tours. We started a gallery, which is currently on pause, but we have continued to exhibit digital art, animation, and film using our large Charles Street facing windows as a screen. And our CNC talks have migrated onto Zoom, and we're doing them on the first Thursday of each month. So I hope you will join us. So I want to give you a brief introduction and show some images of the work of each of these fabulous artists. So starting with Nikki Stokes. I just love these images. So Nikki Stokes is an enterprising crochet designer. What began as a hobby has evolved into a business and a growing philanthropic mission. As owner and operator of HGE Designs fashion company, the spoken word artist turned designer has steadily built her reputation and brand. Since teaching herself to crochet, the collection has grown from simple hats and scarves to one-of-a-kind dresses and designs. The Do-It-Yourself series takes existing patterns and alters them to fit all shapes and sizes. She currently is a crochet designer for the Dollhouse Boutique in Baltimore and Los Angeles. Stokes' passion and commitment to the fight against autism was inspired by her 14-year-old son, Roman. He was diagnosed at age 2, and they are navigating life with autism together. Currently, she is using her art for sensory integration therapy with her son and seeking opportunities to share this in a community setting. So Nikki, thank you for being with us today. We're going to talk more about your work in a sec.
Thank you.
Okay, so next up we have La Loupe Design. So La Loupe was originated in Argentina, where Jorgelina Lopez, who is a textile designer, started exploring fiber as a 3-dimensional medium at her studio in Buenos Aires. In 2016, she relocated to Baltimore and officially launched her first lighting collection in collaboration with her partner, Marco, a wood and cross-disciplinary artist. The name La Loupe, from French loupe or magnifying glass, arises from the idea of observation and discovery. It is influenced both by Japanese and mid-century design, and La Loupe incorporates different textile techniques, such as printing, dyeing, and weaving with traditional woodworking. Along with the handcrafted lighting collections, La Loupe also creates wall art and home decor, accessories exploring the connection between contemporary design and traditional crafts, and finding inspiration in geometric patterns and also forms in nature. So Jorgelina, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
It's beautiful work.
Thanks.
Okay. And then our third panelist today is Tracey Beale. She's an artist and jewelry designer specializing in sterling, copper, gold, and brass metals. Her work is spiritually driven and experimental. Tracey is inspired by ancient African artifacts and adornments, and is particularly drawn to ancient Egyptian jewelry designs. I'm just going to read a quote from Tracey. Egyptians established many of the jewelry making methods we use today. Their designs had meaning and purpose. I aspire to do the same with my work. Metal is beautiful and God made. It has a lifetime longer than the one we are living. Working with metal feels like creating a legacy. I hope my designs and the stories that inspired them are passed down through generations. So Tracey honed her production skills as an interactive jewelry artist for national concert tours featuring The Roots and A Tribe Called Quest. She is also a vocalist in the free jazz group Conjure Collective, and the group is the current artist in residence with Collective Sound. So welcome, Tracey. Just want to show all of your gorgeous images. And I have to say, everybody's done such an amazing job documenting that it's you know, it's just making me want to shop right now. So hopefully everyone in the audience has already spent some time on the ACC website, the beautifully designed shop that they've created. And okay, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and just as we need to, we'll pull up images if it's relevant to what we're talking about. So I just wanted to start out with something that sort of unites us all. Everybody here is Baltimore-based. Some of you are native, some of you are relatively new. Can you each talk about how you came to live in Baltimore and just the influence of the city on your work? And how about we start with Tracey, and then Jorgelina, and then Nikki.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm originally from Baltimore. I lived in Baltimore, the city, up until high school, and then my family moved out to Harford County, which is like 45 minutes away. But you know, when you're from Baltimore and you move, you move out of the city, it's real. So, so we moved out there, and then I came back and went to MICA, and spent 4 years there. And then I lived a couple different places, and then found myself back here in Baltimore. I lived in Philly, New Orleans, and Germany. And I think just, you know, being from here, initially, it just becomes a part of the fabric of who I am, right? And then the work that I make comes from me as well, you know? And I think that Baltimore is a very special place. Baltimore is the kind of place where it's really easy to meet people. I think it's a great place for artists. It's a place where you can definitely discover yourself and discover your own voice. And I think that that's what the city has given to me and to my work. Like, it allowed me to sort of cultivate my voice first, you know what I mean? And cultivate like just how I want my work and myself to show up in the world. And so that sort of, it just becomes a part of who I am, and I take that everywhere I go, you know?
Yeah.
Hi, everybody. That's a beautiful story. I'm not from Baltimore. I'm originally from Argentina, as Cara said, and I moved here 6 years ago. The reason that I decided to move here is because of my now husband, Marco. He's been here for more than 20 years, almost 20 years. So we met a long time ago in 1998 in Miami. We had a relationship, 2-year relationship, and then I went back to Argentina and he moved to Baltimore. And we reconnect in 2013. So here I am. So I'm happy to be here. And you know, I share the same opinion about Baltimore. I love coming from such a big city as Buenos Aires. I think Baltimore gives the opportunity to connect with artists, people. Being a small city has the feeling of small city, but so much happening. So I think since I came here, and it was easy for me to connect with people, you know. So that was part of an influence in Baltimore and in my work, is this support that I found in the community, the artist community. Support and diverse. I think that gave me the opportunity to think in, like, open my mind and connect with other people that I didn't have the opportunity. When I was in Argentina, you know, in Argentina, you create your own bubble of family, and here is like finding family in the community. So I'm very, very grateful for that. And I have adapted very quickly thanks to that support from the Baltimore community and the opportunities that gave it to be doing what I love, you know. So yeah, that's I really love Baltimore. I like the city. It's a beautiful city.
Thank you. Okay, how about Nikki?
Hello, everyone. I'm homegrown. I'm born and raised in Baltimore. My grandparents lived in Park Heights. So we lived 5 minutes away from Pimlico Racetrack, the home of the Preakness. 10-minute bus ride, and I went to Bryn Mawr School for Girls. And so a lot of people automatically, they think of Baltimore and they're always like, oh, The Wire and all these things. But Baltimore it's ingrained in the soil. Baltimore is possessed like with the spirit of resilience. Like the bounce back from the city is amazing. And it's one of the things that I feel like I completely owe to who I am, because there isn't a place in the world or a space that I don't feel I can navigate my way through, that I'm not able to do that because of this city. And so it influences my work, because the ability to make something from nothing, to me, is always inspiring. So I'm always trying to pull something. And even when a lot of my work, which has kept me out of a lot of dark places because of, you know, just emotional issues and trauma and just life, being able to pull something from that nothingness and offer something beautiful for myself and other people. I know that I owe all of that to just being a Baltimore girl. So I love my city as well. The connections, the people, the spirit. It's just that spirit of being able to just get back right into it and just keep going.
Thank you. I wanted to talk a little bit about materials and material culture. And I feel like in the art writing that I do, usually it seems like there's a lot of emphasis on the author or the artist, their bio and their ideas. But for me, the materials that an artist chooses or doesn't choose really has a huge impact on the meaning of the work. So the very specific meaning, we have a history to these materials, a context, the tradition, and it really sort of deepens the stories we're able to tell through our work. So I'm wondering if you would each talk a little bit about your favorite materials and possibly your least favorite materials and why. So anybody want to jump in?
I can jump in.
Okay.
So for me, my main medium is a textile, a fiber, because I'm a textile designer, but and I love to work with thread, which is this it can be used as a visual element, as a line. So I love that that language that I have the thread, but I like to work. I don't like to put myself in one medium. I like to experiment with different materials, and even if it's not a material that I have affinity for, like, I always keep in mind the process of experimenting with that material. So maybe trying to work with that material in a different way will, allow me to discover something else, or the properties of that material that I can use in a different way. So I think in my experiences, as I say, my main interest is working with fiber, but I'm open to work with different materials. I really interested more in the natural materials, but just experimenting with different other materials, I think is important.
And specifically, what kind of fiber, what is exactly your material, and what do you sort of add to it?
So, for example, for my lamps, I use linen. It's fabric, linen. But I usually use, if I'm working with thread, I work with a natural cotton thread. I try to use natural fibers. But yeah, definitely linen and cotton are the main fibers that I use in my work. And I focus in always in a sustainable point of practice in my work, and that is something that I wanted to achieve, and it's difficult sometimes. It's a challenge.
Did I see some indigo dye also in our slideshow? The indigo.
Yes. So the last lamps that I've been experimenting with indigo, which is a great part of the materials. I always wanted to work with natural dyes, and this summer I connect with this indigo garden right here in Baltimore City, the Blue Light Junction. That's a very hard word for me to say. So I had the opportunity to experiment and know the process of natural indigo dye. I can talk more about this project. I really love this opportunity of working with Kenya Miles and Rosa Chang. They are the ones who lead the garden. Yeah, just my aim goal as a designer is to be able to work with sustainable and natural materials. I think that's very important for me.
Thank you. How about Nikki?
So my least favorite material to work with, I'm sorry, Jorgelina, is cotton thread. and probably for me, because when I'm crocheting, it's very, very thin. It's just to give anyone who's not familiar idea, it's usually what they make doilies out of or bathing suits. So when you're crocheting something, more than likely, it's going to take you a very long time to finish it. And it's going to be repetitively the same stitch, no altering. Your highlight may be changing colors. So, so that's probably my least favorite. But as far as I love I love bright, happy yarn. I love fabric. I've crocheted with denim before, where I've shredded denim and just used that materials. I've made blankets. For me, the materials are about energy and how it makes me feel. And I feel like colors have a feeling to them. Like colors make you happy, or you can look at a color and, you know, that color looks kind of sad. So for me, it's about the materials, how they make me feel emotionally, and then also how they feel against your skin. Some of your favorite items that you wear, they feel good on you. And so I take that into consideration in the materials that I'm using. You know, just, are you going to be happy in it? Are you going to be itchy in it? Like, those are the things that I think about when I'm making materials. And yeah, so I love anything happy. I'm sorry, I'm going to try to work on the thread, but yeah, I thought it was ironic that was her favorite, and I'm like, that's what I don't.
Well, I guess different words, you know.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah, and then Nikki, do you have any favorite sources that you like to get your yarn from in Baltimore?
Yes, so Neighborhood Fiber Company is amazing. They have beautiful hand-dyed wool. I mean, colors you've never seen before. And then they have colors that are named after Baltimore neighborhoods, which is super fantastic. I love them. I love Malabrigo, which has an amazing wool, like, because most people, I think when they think of wool, they think of like itchy, it doesn't feel good. But I mean, the way that some of this stuff feels on your skin is amazing. So not only do you have something pretty, you have something that actually feels really good as well.
Yeah. Okay. And then Tracey, can you talk a little bit about why metal is so compelling to you?
Well, metal is my husband, my girlfriend, my child. It's I enjoy working with metal because it can do and be, so it can be several different things at once, right? So you can melt it down to the point where it's liquid, right? And then it solidifies, and then it becomes really rigid and really tough. So I like that it can go through all of these phases. It gets this, it's as thin as like some of the 24 karat gold leaf that I use, that as soon as you touch it, it just sort of kind of like disintegrates. You know what I mean? So I love all of the possibilities with metal, and I like pressing on those possibilities. Like, ooh, what can we do? Like, how far can you push it? What are you not supposed to do? That's always really fun to me. And it's funny, Nikki, like, you do a lot of crochet. I'm working with a friend of mine, Michelle Blue. I don't know if y'all know each other, but she's a crochet artist too. So I'm like basically like getting her to hopefully like work with me and like crochet some metal, which she's doing it. We're like slowly making it happen, but that's another wonderful thing. Like, that there's so much you can do between like sheet metal and wire and liquid metal, and even just experimenting a little bit with the solder, which is the thing that you use to put the metal together that usually goes unseen. Like, what does that look like when you actually see it? So just really trying to do all the things I'm not supposed to do and make it sustainable and make it work and wearable and beautiful, No,
I love that. And Raquel, can you pull up an image of one of the pieces with glass also of Tracey's work? I'm curious about, there's an entire series called the Geist series, I believe, and it's all, it utilizes broken glass that's then set into a metal, what is that called? An armature? I don't know.
A bezel.
Yes. So this is from that series. Can you talk about how this came about?
Yeah, so this is an interesting story. So long story short, essentially my car was vandalized. It was broken into. I'm like leaving my job with a coworker, go to the car. It's pouring down, raining. It's really late at night. It's like one of those like early winter nights, like not my favorite time of year. You know what I mean? As soon as I get in the car, I close the door, and then the back windshield just sort of like crumbles because clearly someone had broken the windshield. So I hear all this glass crumble. Of course, I'm pissed off. I'm angry. I get out of the car. I'm about to call the insurance company, but like as I got out of the car and saw the glass on the ground, it was just like all of my annoyance and frustration around everything just sort of went away, and like my first thought was like, this glass is beautiful, you know. It was raining at the time, you know what I mean, and then so the ground was wet and it was dark, so there's like the street lamp and the whole Baltimore feeling. I'm pretty sure violins played. It was like it was just this moment, you know what I mean. And at the same time, it was also a really it was just a really tough time for me personally and emotionally, you know what I mean? And, you know, I had my own little bouts with depression and different things like that. So it was a really tough time for me. And so the process of like, I look at the glass, it's absolutely beautiful. And then that process of physically picking it up off the ground just sort of reminded me of what we have to do with ourselves and with our spirit, you know, in life. Like, sometimes life will break you, sometimes life will shatter you, and you have to pick your little self up, like pick up all your little pieces. You're never going to be the same again. You're not supposed to be the same. You know what I mean? I don't even think the glass wants to be the same for real. Like, does it really want to go back to being a windshield? Does it really want to go back to being something that people look through? You know, like, so we have to like put ourselves back together and like love the new shape of our spirit, you know? And so I saved all the glass from my car. I'm still using a lot of the glass from the car because I had a hatchback. So it was like a lot of glass. And then I embed it with 24 karat gold leaf. So some of the gold that you see in the middle or behind the glass, that's 24 karat gold leaf, just sort of adding that little bit of like extra, but still super delicate luxury, because that's not even super resilient either. And these shapes that you see, each shape has a meaning, you know, so like you take the rectangular shape in the middle, that's grounding. Like I think of that as like, you know, almost like putting your staff in the ground, so to speak, like truly like grounding yourself and grounding your spirit. Triangles, pyramids, that's power, Holy Trinity, however you want to look at it. Circles are always sort of like life and time, cyclical nature of life, you know. And then the leaf shape on the end, that's more or less like passion and sensuality. Like we all need a certain level of passion in our lives, you know, like once your fire goes out, it's just like, you might as well just lay down. We gotta like keep the fire burning, you know? And so I designed these like, not just because like, okay, I'm going through a tough time and let me design things to make me feel better. But I feel like it's something that we all feel and that we all go through. And I think that a lot of the meanings behind these pieces, like people are drawn to them for specific reasons. And I want them to wear them knowing that that's what they mean, and like really feeling like the spirit and the power of them, you know, because my work is very much spiritually based, and they come out different every time. Like it's kind of fun, you know, because each piece of glass is different, you know, so it comes out very different. And it probably took me almost like, I don't know, a year to really decide how I was going to work with this, because the glass itself would break as I tried to do stuff, as I tried to do things with it. So it would like literally fall to pieces, just kind of like in our life when you try to get yourself back together and then boom, you fall apart again, or something doesn't quite go right. So the whole process just sort of like feeds itself, you know what I mean?
No, that's beautiful.
And my baby.
No, and I think it's really interesting. I think with all three of you, and having the opportunity to talk to you, all three of you seem like you are really open to changes, opportunities, lessons, stories, that, you know, integrating this into the work that you do. So I wonder, Jorgelina, we can talk about some of your origami pieces. Raquel, if you want to pull up some of the lanterns with the folded sides. But Jorgelina originally studied in Buenos Aires. She was a textile designer, but she wanted it to be three-dimensional, which that's not a typical thing for a textile designer. So she wanted to create these three-dimensional forms with the fabric. And she told me a really interesting story about how this series came to be after the workshop you were invited to do, which I just thought was an interesting connection.
Yes, that was a great opportunity because, I was here in Baltimore, and the Baltimore Museum of Art contacted me and invited to lead a workshop related to Annette Cowenberg's exhibition that I was at that moment in the museum. You know, when I saw her work, I didn't know what to do with the work for the workshop. So when I saw her work, I was fascinated with the textile sculpture that she works. The sculpture that she transformed a flat surface with a folded flat surface to do this very beautiful sculpture. So I decided to go with that path, just explore the how we can create form and a structure, you know, a three-dimensional form by folding a two-dimensional surface. So that's how I started discovering this tool to design this technique to just transform the paper. In this case, in the beginning, I start folding paper, but then I wanted to see how can I translate the same the paper to fabric. So I experiment, because when you fold paper, the paper has memory. So it's you know, you can see that with the origami, you can see all these different forms that folded by paper. But with the fabric, it's very different, doesn't have any memory. So after experimenting, I found that the combination of two, the flexibility of the fabric with the rigidity or the memory of the paper. So that's how, after the workshop, for me, it was a great experience. So I start, you know, exploring more. And that's how I start designing these lamps that you see here. And this collection is being one of my favorites since I started. It keeps growing, and I keep exploring different forms, and I think it's a great way to I think it gave me the opportunity I didn't never expected. So I think the challenge of, you know, giving this workshop, it gave me the opportunity to open to work with a new concept or a new collection. So yeah, so
still going, right? I mean, you've been working on this series for years now.
Yes, so I started this collection in the year 2017, 2018, and I have been working with this collection since then, and it keeps going, and I keep exploring. And I also incorporate shibori to the collection, because shibori also works the same concept of folding with the fabric to create pattern in the fabric. So so for me, it was this concept of exploring this treating a two-dimensional surface to create something different, because shibori emphasized in the process of putting action in the fabric. To after it's dyed, you open it and you find this beautiful pattern that I fell in love with. And one of the part that I wanted to, as I mentioned before, work in this collection is work with indigo. And that's how I connect with the indigo farm. And now within the collection of the origami, we launched with Kenya Miles a limited edition of combining origami and hand resist dye with the indigo that it was locally grown and harvested right here in Baltimore City. So it's an amazing experience. Yeah, and it made me the opportunity also to connect with other artists as Kenya, and also Rosa C.G. Tang. She's also part of the Indigo Garden. So yeah, so you know, opportunities and meeting new challenges, like you say, it brings it's kind of like inspiration to keep going, and you know, just keeping creating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For people who want to see your work in person, you have a large commission that'll be up soon at the 410 lofts it's in the Bromo district. So once that's up, I think that's in a sort of a public area, some larger sculptural lighting pieces.
Yes, actually that piece, I work with the same, the origami shades, but I work with my husband. So that helps me a lot to make sense of the space, working with a bigger space, the relationship between the space and the object. His architectural modeling, so his sense of and knowledge of that helped me to work with this project. So yeah, it's a big project and I'm very happy. And it's gonna be, I think it's gonna be at the end of April, ready to be. The building's still in construction. They are finalizing the last details, or and with the COVID, the constructions took longer. So I think will be ready to open at the end of April. Yeah.
Thank you. So Nikki, I think you in particular, also, like, your work has completely evolved and transformed based on your lived experiences. So you started out with the crocheting to sort of calm yourself. I know there have been some extended, hospital visits and stays with your son. It's been incredibly difficult. So you started crocheting as a way to sort of calm yourself. But what you discovered was other people really responded to the work. And so you've done fashion design with someone that we both like very much, Natalie Carroll. And then your work has sort of evolved into some other products as well. So can we talk about how, like, sort of the evolution of your work and where it started, and how your experience of being a mother to an autistic son has really shaped your aesthetic?
Yeah, so I always laugh because I say my business kind of started backwards. I never intended on selling anything or making anything for anybody. I literally started crocheting for myself. It was a stress reliever. It made me happy. Then I started wearing hats and scarves, and people were like, "Hey, where'd you get that?" And I'm like, "Oh, I made it." And then people were like, "Hey, could you make me something?" And then so as it progressed and Roman got older, there were just resources we needed that we didn't have, whether it was respite or swim lessons. And so the things that I were making paid for those things for us. And then eventually I started doing fashion shows. We bought iPads for his school. And then I started doing artwork. And so the connection that I made with Natalie was we had a mutual customer / friend. And I made her a crochet dress that had a portrait of Erykah Badu on it. And so she wore this dress. And so she didn't tell me, but she took the dress to Natalie and said, "Hey, I need you to take this dress and turn it into a new dress so that I'm not still wearing the same dress over and over." And so the first time I saw it, the Dollhouse posted it on their Instagram and my head like exploded because I had been a fan of her work forever. And it was the most beautiful thing that I had ever seen. And so I just started doing that work. When she launched the Dollhouse boutique in LA, she invited me out to be a featured designer. And the picture that you're actually showing, these were the designs that I created for that show. And so I love those pieces because they're made from granny squares. And so most of the time when you tell people that you crochet, they're like, "Oh, you make blankets." I'm like, not exactly. So it was, how could I take something that, traditionally it's a granny square. It's not the coolest thing in the world. But how could I turn that into fashion, something that somebody would want to wear? And that piece is made entirely of granny squares. The dress on the other side are larger squares that are all connected. And so it was the ability to create. And so what happened from that point was, over the years, as I was creating things, whenever my son would have sensory issues. For those who don't know, sensory processing issue basically is when your brain has difficulty processing external stimuli. So lights could be too bright, or for some children, loud sounds will make them vomit, or tags in their clothes can itch their skin. He had a blanket that whenever he got upset, he would rub his face on it. If we had a hospital stay, that blanket was going. And I started realizing that the fibers and the fabrics that I was using, and even the stitches, the tactile things that he could touch, would help him and soothe him through those processing issues. So fast forward to 2020 and the pandemic, Roman has always had access to sensory rooms and panels at school. And so they are basically rooms that are padded. They have lights, tactile things that he can touch. So when he's having a moment, he can go in that room. But we were home and he didn't have access to that. So we built him one in my home. And we took padding, we put them on the walls, we put them on the floor. I created blankets that I hand crocheted, almost like duvets that we could put weighted blankets in. And so the more that I did it, I realized he doesn't have access. Neither does his classmates. Neither do other families who are now forced to become behavior therapists and speech therapists for their children at home. And so I went into mommy mode and was like, okay, how do we do this? How do we figure this out? And so that's how the sensory products were born. And I didn't even realize it myself that I was using some of those products, like even the scarves. You can kind of think of it as like a wearable fidget. So if you have a scarf on, you can actually put little sandbags. They sell little like sand pouches, 1 or 2 pounds. You could stick it in a scarf to make your scarf heavier. So it imitates like a wearable weighted blanket. So these are all things that are everyday items that someone can wear and someone not necessarily say, okay, well, that person is having sensory issues, or, you know, that person's suffering from anxiety. It's about comfort and creating this inclusive space. And so once I came up with that idea, it was like, okay, this is really a thing. I actually applied for an Elevation Award, and I'm a part of that cohort. I was awarded a grant to come up with a way to produce sensory products for families and children at home. So it literally went from one thing to this whole other thing that I didn't realize, you know, I had been sitting on it. And, you know, that even with the pandemic, just not being able to connect, it was ironic for us because autism can be really isolating. And so I literally was watching everyone forced to live the life that we kind of lived anyway. So having things virtually, I was like, oh, I can handle it. I don't have to leave the house. I don't have to go anywhere. I can just sit in front of a computer. I was like, yes. So it was, you know, realizing that just kind of letting people see what life is like for us and what we have to deal with, but then also realizing that I had 16 years to adjust to it. People were having to do it immediately. So even with sensory processing issues, you know, normal adults experience that. How many times are you at work and you're stressed out, and to go to that quiet room with the dim lights for something soft in your hand could make your day go by easier. So I think it was a way for me to realize that it's not just us. It's something that most people go through and they don't realize it. But then it also, I think it gave people the idea of the experience of what it's like to be isolated from, you know, just from people, because it's difficult. You can go someplace, it's too loud, or the lights are too bright, or it's too many people. So just being able to learn how to navigate in that space. And it just, again, it made me try to figure out how can I help other parents who don't have access to this and how to give them that access.
It's amazing. And that was not where I thought when you and I started talking, that was not what I expected at all. But it makes the work like that much more meaningful. So one observation I would like to make in regards to art versus craft. You know, I have a fine arts background, started this publication as a, you know, fine arts publication for artists, whatever artist means. So like that definition has certainly grown and expanded, but it seems like people involved in the craft world are much more aware, and this is no shade to artists, but they're much more aware of how to build a market for the work. And maybe this is because in the fine arts world, every artist is like, oh, I'm just going to get a gallery and then they're going to do all that stuff for me, which I don't think is actually true. You know, and I mean, craft artists can have their work collected by, you know, art collectors or museums, but it's also functional, it's useful. And so I'm just curious about how you came to sort of understand your own market, how you built your brand, and how you support your creative practice through an economic model, because, you know, we all have to eat, we all have to pay our bills. None of us got into this business because we decided we wanted to be rich, but you know, the economic side is really important. So how about Tracey, can you start us off in terms of economics and market?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I straddle both worlds in a way, you know, so, and not in a way, that's just, yeah, I'm living living between two worlds. So yeah, just having the fine arts background, number one. I also, you know, just working in the museum field, like I produce programming for the BMA. The BMA is actually like one of my retail outlets as well. And in terms of like how you create a market, but see, this is the thing. So even though I studied fine arts, my bachelor's was in general fine arts, went to MICA, did the whole deal. I was always very just concerned with how I was going to be able to make a living once I graduated. You know what I mean? And like I understood that I was in a very interesting place in, you know, learning, or like getting this degree in fine arts, but I didn't want to be a professor. I didn't want to be a teacher. I didn't want to go into education specifically. So I needed to figure out what that was going to look like and how I was going to be an artist in that space. And so I don't know, over time, I just began to just always take on like other projects and do other things. Just from day one, like I've always had, I guess what people would call now like a day job. Now, I guess it's all considered multiple streams of income. So it just depends on what language you want to use. So I've always just tried to like, I don't know, just always try to keep my hands in different things. You know, social media is a great outlet in terms of marketing. Yeah, like you could just kind of have to keep yourself aware, you know what I mean? And keep yourself involved in doing, I guess, like different projects, you know, with a good balance.
Well, and how do you do that research? I mean, how do you figure out what to charge for a specific piece even?
Well, jewelry is very relative. Like jewelry is an interesting one because there's no one can say it's right or wrong, right? So sometimes it has to do with just you as an artist. You know what I mean? I've been doing this for like 20 years, right? So, okay, so maybe my work should, you know, cost a little bit more than it did back in like 98. Okay. then sometimes it's like there's a science to it, right? So how much does the metal cost me? How much does it cost me to get something casted? How much time did it take me to come up with the idea and figure out the process? Like you just like literal costs that come out of pocket for me. All of those things sort of go into the same bucket. Like I actually have an Excel sheet that lists everything out, like how much I've paid for every single thing, and whether that payment looks like time or it looks like money. It goes into the sheet, and then I can assign amounts to it, you know, and then I pay myself a design fee, you know. And then I see what the wholesale cost is, and you know, multiply that times. Am I getting too granular? Multiply that 2.5. Multiply that by 2.5 to see what my retail price is going to be, and then I decide whether that is doable, because sometimes you can price yourself out, right? So, or you come out with a number that feels like it's too under. So like that's just sort of where my circle comes in, where they give me feedback, or I'll do research online, like what is other stuff that look like this, you know, like where does this fall, you know, and then you decide on like how the price looks. But just speaking in terms of life, like I'm all about the Excel and like really mapping out how much does this stuff cost me? How much time am I really spending on doing this? And then if I make it multiple times, does that time cut down? Like yeah, maybe all that's overthinking. I have no idea. But
No, I don't think I mean, and even just the packaging design, the boxes, they have writing on them. There's a quote. It's, you know, this beautiful logo. So
your electricity, like, what does it take? What does it take for you to make the thing? You know what I mean? All the way through, whether you can touch it or not. Like, what does it take for you to make the thing, assign a value to it? There's a wholesale cost, multiply it, there's a retail cost, and then you figure out what you want to do.
yeah, no, that sounds really healthy. So Jorgelina, you were telling me that you tend to do a lot of different craft shows and craft fairs. And it seems like that context has sort of helped you figure out like what your market is. So
yes, definitely showing what I do with the people, it helps me to figure out my market, not exactly what people was looking for, but how to show my work, you know. So I always, during my studies, I study marketing, and I always have this business plan, not as organized as Tracey, definitely, but have this business plan of how to manage all these different elements of showing your work, not only as an artist, but as a business or a brand or a studio design. So definitely doing craft shows helps me to connect with people and also find my way of communicating what I do. The process of building my brand, it took a lot of years. It was a process that I didn't plan. It just evolved as I was communicating who I am, you know, how I want to express myself, my approach as a designer. So, but definitely, I always try to find the balance between this economic aspect of what I do and the creative process. Like Tracey said, you know, I try to figure out how time it takes me to do what I do. Sometimes I'm not that organized. I try, because I think it's part of the price that you put, but also the price is also part of the process of how you can, you know, for example, the lamps that I do, it took me months to figure out how to come to the final product, final material. So that process also costs money and time. So, but yeah, and sometimes I have to stop creating and stop experimenting, because there is a time that you have to stop and, you know, think in the point of view of the consumer, the functionality of the object, how I'm gonna product, you know, make the production process, how much it's gonna cost me. So all this aspect is part of the balance between the creative process and business, and understanding my customer. You know, I that's what I really like to be doing shows, because I can speak with them. Speak with the person personally is very different than, you know, just showing your work online. So
yes.
yeah.
So I just want to add, and so all of the panelists will get a copy of the chat and the comments. But we have Jeffrey, who wanted to say that the notion that craft is inherently functional is an idea that is no longer true, just as the delineation between art and craft are no longer appropriate. So I just wanted to thank him for making that comment. And then wanted to give Nikki a chance to respond to the previous question. I know that you said you had a friend who basically like sat you down and was like, look, this is how much these things should, you can't give this stuff away, first of all, right?
Yes. I'm very blessed that in my tribe, I'm the creative one and I'm surrounded with numbers people. So for me, it's so much of what I do is hard work that I would do regardless of a paycheck, whether I was getting paid or making money. And they really sat me down and said, look, you want to be able to give this away. So somebody's got to pay for it. You have to pay yourself. This is not something that you can just keep doing and keep doing. And it was funny because we went into a store, and I'm not going to say any names, and there were designer scarves, and they all were exactly the same. It was probably made on a machine. And she was like, what does that tag say? Now it's like $300. And she's like, yes. And no one made that by hand. They're all exactly the same. You are making one of a kind items. Most of the items that you are making are being made from materials that aren't even mass produced. So it's handmade, it's love. There is energy that you put into it. Like that is worth something. And so, I had to sit with that and say, you know what, you're right. Because like I said, so much of what I do, it's to improve someone's life and to make their quality of life better. And as a person, I feel like we all are entitled to that. We all deserve that. And so it was very difficult coming up with like, how much does this cost? And, like Tracey said, just having, I have a spreadsheet. I don't always use it, but I'm getting better. That says, this is what this material costs. This is what your time costs. And because I want to do this full time, what I started doing was, if you were at your job and you worked this many hours, how much money would you make? So if this is something you want to do full time, you have to be able to transfer one to the other. So you have to look at it so that you can live off of what it is that you do. So I'm definitely thankful for the numbers of people that are around me that, that remind me, yes, it's hard work, but you have to assign a value to it because you're valuable. So.
Yep. Yeah. So we are actually 2 minutes over 2:00. But I feel like I need to ask one more question. So I hope if people want to stay with us for a couple more minutes, they can, or if they, if their lunch break's over, we appreciate you being here. But I really wanted to sort of segue from what you just said, Nikki, and then just kind of end on thinking about, well, what is the value of living with one of a kind handmade objects versus what we're surrounded by in this world, which is things that are mass produced, and how does living with thoughtfully made, intelligently and sensitively designed, not mass produced objects, how does this impact one's quality of life? And if there's certain objects that you live with that they fill you with love, they fill you with happiness, I thought that would be a nice place to end. So whoever wants to hop in.
I can go. I think for me, the work that I do, it's an energy that I pour into it. And it's something that when you get something that is handmade, that person is putting themselves into that thing. And I think often the difference with art and craft and the disagreements about it, because you always hear those terms together. It's always art and crafts, it's always art and crafts, but you never hear anyone say like craft and art. And I think because in some ways it feels like art is subjective, and craft is like this measurable thing that you can hold. And I think what happens is, when it comes to art, a lot of times it's what people think is valuable and what a label says is valuable. Whereas with craft, people have kind of poured all of that energy into the label of it and not the love that goes into making it. And I think that when you live with those items and you support those artists, you're then pouring that energy and that worthiness into the person and to the energy that goes into making it, and not necessarily the label of what it is.
I mean, it's hard to like put a value on, like, I don't know, value is always subjective, you know what I mean? But this always takes me back to the idea of like just there being some cultures in Africa where the word art didn't even really exist. You made something because you needed it. You made a thing because it should exist. It should exist for what reason, I don't know. Whether you want to use it as a something, or but you you've created something because you feel like it should exist. And that is what artists, crafters, whatever you want to call us, whatever makes you feel good, that is what we do. Like, we create something new in the world. And I think that's radical. I think it's audacious. I think it's freaking beautiful. So you can call it art, you can call it craft, you can call it whatever you want. And I've gone through these like conversations a lot, and I'm not saying that it's not an important conversation to have, but I'm just happy that it exists. And I feel blessed that I'm able to actually do it, you know, like, yeah, that's what I got on that one.
Yeah, I'm completely agree with Tracey and Nikki in that I think the distinction between art and craft could be something, I mean, I think they intersect all the time. So it's not something that it's something you cannot put a label on it. I think it's a continuous between art and craft. I think valuing the traditional handmade process of having these objects around you is very important. I think people really don't think where the objects come from, some, you know, the mass productions, but I think having this handmade, you know, beautiful made artistic objects brings, as Nikki said, the energy that was put in the object, making the object, and also respecting the culture behind that, making that object, you know, the culture, the meaning, the time the people put in the object doing it, and the love, and you know, just I think it's very important also to bring those objects to everybody. So I think it's important, the awareness of handmade projects. Sometimes handmade projects cost most because it's you know, the time we put on it is that's what costs it. But I think it's important to bring accessibility to those objects to everybody. So I think it's important to be aware, to warn people that everybody can make things. You know, everybody can make something with their hands. So I think that's important to bring to everybody, even somebody that is not craft people or artists. You know, just living with you made with your hands. I think it's a beautiful way of value the importance of handmade objects on your everyday life. Yeah,
I agree completely. I think there's some aspect of magic or spirit or love or energy or whatever it is that you want to call it, that is just, it's just embedded in these things. And as much as possible, you know, even though we live in a society where it seems like more is more, teaching people that sometimes having less but of much greater quality, of high quality, is actually a real, it makes a real difference in your life. So I just want to say thank you to all of the panelists for being here. I want to thank you for all of the comments. Yes, we will send you a video. We will send you follow-up links. And in the meantime, head over to the American Craft Council website for their virtual show. There are amazing, beautiful, exquisitely designed objects. And every time you buy something from them, you're supporting an artist. So thank you for being with us today. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
thank you everybody. Thank you, Cara.
Thank you.